Good evening. Thank you for coming. Everybody nice and comfortable and can't breathe? I'm Father Joe Palermo, the pastor here at St. Francis Xavier Church, and Father Tien Nguyen is the parochial vicar here. So on our behalf and the behalf of our parish community, we want to welcome you to 2 nights of presentations on this subject, Forming Consciences for Faithful Citizenship. We're very excited to be able to host this for the diocese as we come near to very significant elections, national, state, and local level occurring in November. And we're blessed to have the bishops have been putting out a document for many, many years, and it keeps getting revised and added to as more issues surface and as more clarity is reached on particular issues. So we're very happy to be able to host this, and we'll begin with a prayer. So I invite you to please stand. And I'll lead what is on the left of the screen, if you would respond on the right. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Heavenly Father, Sacred Heart of Jesus, Holy Spirit, Immaculate Heart of Mary, Saint Joseph, Saint Michael, Saint Francis Xavier, and all saints in heaven. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Thank you. I've known our speaker tonight for many years. In fact, I'm responsible for his wedding. I prepared Ron and his wife, Andrea, for marriage quite a few years ago, 20 years ago, and they have a son, Christian, who is in high school, and I also baptized him. And I just am so grateful. If there's one really good thing that has come out for me personally, well, from coronavirus, is that Ron became available to become the youth minister at our parish. We're very excited about that. He has a degree in engineering, and also he practiced law as an attorney. And in addition to that, beginning in about 2002, he began to get very actively involved in the church, and eventually went to Notre Dame Seminary as a layman and received a Master's of Theology degree from Notre Dame Seminary. He has served as a director of religious education in one of our Catholic parishes. He has served as a youth minister in one of our parishes. He has been a Catholic high school teacher at St. Charles Catholic High School, and currently he is a teacher at Ursuline Academy. He teaches theology at Ursuline Academy. So he's with our staff as a part-time employee and staff member, but we're very delighted to have him. We had the first big youth event 2 Saturdays ago for our high school CYO. It was very successful, and he did a great job of involving parents and having a wonderful evening. And also I want to tell you that he's a really brave man, because anybody who would get up in front of a crowd and talk about voting is a really brave man. Because if there's one thing we have very strong opinions about, it's voting, our candidates, our parties, our positions. And so this presentation is going to be about how do you form your conscience. And it will eventually get to some of the salient points of the moral teaching of the Catholic Church. So I'm going to let him explain to you how all that happens. I'm just very grateful that he's here. This is obviously a very timely topic. We are recording this tonight, and it will be available on our parish website beginning tomorrow. A number of people asked that we would do that. So with great anticipation and excitement, please help me welcome Mr. Ron Cortade.
Okay, do y'all mind if I take this off? It's always daunting when you hear yourself spoken about so glowingly, right? And you're still breathing. So I'm still here. And thank you, Father Joe, for the kind introduction. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for taking time out to see what this is all about. By show of hands, how many of you have read or heard about the document, Forming Consciences for Faithful Citizenship? Okay, a few hands. That's good. I have spoken to, this is the second election cycle where I have talked on this topic. I'll let y'all just kind of read this while I talk a little. And some of the things Father Joe may have said, some of the things he may not have said. This is the second election cycle that I've spoken on this. The first time I did this was in October of 2016 at St. Edward the Confessor Church. Christian was still, gosh, he's in 10th grade now, so 4 years ago, right? 6th grade. Father Seiler trusted me to get up, and I had 45 minutes to give the presentation on the book. I call it a book, it's a pamphlet. And so this is my second time giving this talk. I hope that you find it interesting. I hope that it confirms some things you know. I hope it challenges you in some ways that you may not have thought about, right? I don't know if I'm brave or I'm the dullest knife in the drawer, right? To get up and do this. But we as Catholics are called to be in the public square. We are not called to just stay Catholic in our churches inside the building or in our homes. We are called by Christ himself to go out into the world as lay people. I'm not a deacon, obviously not a priest, right? I'm just a lay person like most of you all here tonight, excepting Father Joe and Father Tien, and I don't know, there may be a deacon or two out there. I don't know. But we're just lay people, right? And we go about our lives. And so let me illustrate a couple of things. Think back. When was the first time you voted? What was the election? What were the issues? Who were the candidates? How did you go about forming yourself to vote? Informing yourself? For me, that was 40 years ago, this year. It was 1979. I was a 19-year-old kid, and I was going to vote in my first presidential election. And the candidates, if you recall, were Ronald Reagan and Jimmy Carter. And I went about this deep on my analysis of who I was going to vote for. It was not very deep at all. I had just gotten my driver's license in 1976, I believe, and the gas lines were really long, and the gas cost a lot to a high school kid. And I had started cutting grass when I was 8 years old, and I could remember buying a gallon of gas for 30 cents. And now all of a sudden it's $1.70, and I'm in high school. And so I voted a pocketbook issue. That was as deep as I got into it. And so that was the basis of my formation for that election. That was it. I didn't get very deep. Did I vote out of a well-formed conscience as I look back on it? No. Did I apply Catholic social teaching to the issues and the candidates? No. I'll be honest, 12 years of Catholic education, I'm not even sure I even knew what the Catholic social teaching was. That's sad to say. My students know. Trust me. If they're in my class, they know. I've had the pleasure of teaching, but not just teaching this subject for 3 years. It started at St. Charles Catholic when I began lobbying about, well, I guess it was 5 years ago or 6 years ago, to include a course in the curriculum called Law and Morality. It was a class that I borrowed significant structure from a course that is taught in law schools called Law and Theology. I adapted it to the high school level. I made it uniquely and distinctively Catholic. And then I presented it to the administration, and they said, okay, Ron, we'll think about it. That was year one. Year two, they said, okay, we'll put it in the curriculum and see if anybody signs up. Well, 26 brave seniors decided to take the course. And along with myself leading, we took the document and we studied the document. That was 17-18 school year, and then I did it again 18-19, and then I taught it again 19-20 school years. This document, the document that I'm going to present to you all over the next 2 evenings. As I mentioned to Father Joe, this document is really deep. It is really deep. It should be a graduate level course. That's how deep it could be. I invite you to start to read it, to begin to process it, to listen to people who are talking about it. Authentic teaching from this document. There are many people who say, oh, that's Catholic social teaching, but is it or isn't it? Hopefully we can learn some of those distinctions as we go through this. Okay, so what exactly are we going to do? This is what we're going to do over the next 2 nights. Talk 1 is right there, and I'll read it off the page so I don't get confused. Introduction. What is forming consciences for faithful citizenship, a call to responsibility? What is this document? As Father Joe said, he said a little bit about it, but let's delve into it a little more, peel a few layers off of the onion and dig into it to the core and see what it is. And then, what is our conscience? What is it? What isn't it? How do we form it? What are challenges to forming our conscience? All things that we do prior to even beginning to look at candidates or issues. It's like showing up. The Saints are going to show up on Sunday to play Tom Brady and the Buccaneers, right? But what's the first thing they did? The first thing they did was they went to training camp. They lifted weights. They ran. They did drills, right? They began to get themselves ready for competition. They didn't say, oh, okay, we're ready. 1 week of practice, let's go tackle them. No, and then they game plan and they strategize and they do all of this stuff ahead of time before they even start to look at Tampa Bay. Now they're going to focus on Tampa Bay. It's game week. And there's a process they're going to go through to be ready on Sunday to play that game. That's what we're going to do here over the next 2 nights. Tonight we're going to do the top one. The second night, next week, I was joking with Father Joe ahead of time, that'll be like New Year's Eve and July 4th, all put into one. Why? Because look at the topic, applying Catholic social justice teaching to the major issues, according to the bishops in the document, this election cycle. What are those major issues? What are the bishops teaching us about those issues? What does our faith teach us about those issues? Where does this faith come from? Does it just drop from the sky? Or is it well-reasoned? Is it well thought out? Is it intellectual as well as faith-based? Right? We don't differentiate, well, let's say it like this. Faith and reason go together in our Catholic faith. We don't divorce one from the other. We join the two. And then how do we live our faithful citizenship in the public square? Do we seek to pulverize the other side? Do we seek to win arguments? Do we seek to have our way? Or is there a process we can go about? Because remember, what's the ultimate goal for Catholics and Christians? Is to win souls for Christ. Right? That's the ultimate goal. And so, how do we go about doing that when the culture is just cavalcading down upon us in such a way that it's almost unbearable in circumstances? Some of y'all may be at jobs where you have to bite your lip until the point where it bleeds because you just can't speak freely. That's reality. That's real. I'm not there. But my wife is in the world, right? She works in a secular business, if you will. And she has to be careful of what she says and how she says what she says, so as not to be misunderstood and keep things separate and compartmentalized. I get all that. I used to be there, right? Okay, so let's keep going. Disclaimer. What would a talk be from a lawyer without a disclaimer? Right? The fine print, so to speak. Y'all, I'm not an expert by any stretch of the imagination. I am better this election cycle than I was last. I imagine I'll be better next election cycle than I am this election cycle, because the document is so incredibly dense with material that it's taking me a long time to absorb it and really understand some of the issues and the complexity of them and how they interrelate with one another. So if you're sitting there feeling like, oh my gosh, why did I come tonight? I should not have come. No, we start where we start. You are where you are, and that's it. Be happy where you are, and that's okay. Form your conscience to the best of your ability and make a prudent decision and cast a vote. And under the circumstances, that's all we can do. I look back at some of the votes I cast and think, oh my gosh, what was I thinking? Well, at the time, that's what I was thinking. That's all I can do. Okay, second election cycle, y'all can read all of that. I don't represent the bishops. I don't represent the church. The Louisiana Bishops Conference, I don't represent anybody. They have never been a client of mine ever in the history of my law practice. I am not a paid spokesperson. Right? I volunteer to do this. I would do this if I wasn't the youth minister. I would do this if I wasn't a teacher. This is my passion. This is what I really, really do. Now, should we all do something along these lines? At the bottom, I'm going to read from the bottom, and it's going to go into the next slide. I'm a lay Catholic, like most of you here this evening, right? The authority...
They said they can't hear you. Can you talk louder?
Oh, they can't hear me? How's that? Is that better? Oh my gosh. The worst thing a speaker can do is not be heard. Okay. I'm not let's see. The authority with which I speak comes from a document that is a Vatican II document called Lumen Gentium. And I probably just butchered the Latin. It means Light of the Nations, a Vatican II document, specifically paragraph 31. Paragraph 31 says, all of that is written. I have highlighted the key parts. Is this working? Laity, that's us. It says right here that the laity are all the faithful except those in holy orders and those in the state of religious life. That's us. We have a different way of speaking than the clergy. We experience things that the clergy don't experience. People don't talk to us in hushed tones. They don't speak to us in polite terminology. They are blunt. They are in our faces, at our jobs, at the schoolyards, in the grocery stores. Right? The culture is in our faces in ways that they're not, oftentimes, with the clergy or the bishops. So we have to learn how to speak to the culture. Okay, so the laity, we are in the secular world, but the laity, by their very vocation, seek the kingdom of God by engaging in temporal affairs. Whatever those affairs are, accounting, law, engineering, nursing, teaching, whatever they happen to be, wherever God has placed you, by ordering them according to the plan of God. That's our job. It's not the bishop's job. It's not Father Joe's job. It's our job to order the temporal affairs of society. I highlighted in yellow those references in that paragraph that refer to us and where we are as laity, and the green are the actions that we're called to do, the verbs professions. We live ordinary lives, ordinary circumstances of family and social life. We are called, what are we called to do? To work for the sanctification of the world from within our professions and circumstances as leaven, to raise society up. That's our mission as lay Catholics. So when I see someone on television, any channel, and I watch them all, because I want to get a broad view of who's out there talking about what, my first filter is that person acting as leaven, or is that person acting in a selfish way, a self-righteous way? Are they only looking out for themselves? Is it about political expediency or something like that, right? Why are they saying what they're saying? Especially if they preface what they're about to say with, I'm a devout Catholic. I'm a faithful Catholic. My antenna goes straight up. And now I'm really paying attention. Okay? I'm going to listen to you now. You got my attention. That's a hook. Now I'm going to listen to you, and I'm going to judge you according to what you say and what you do, based on your own very statement that you're a faithful and devout Catholic. If you're consistent in words and deeds with what you say, I'm more apt to believe you, have faith in you. But if you are, contrary, living contrary to or acting contrary to what you're saying, then I'm going to make a judgment. That scares teenagers, right? When you say, oh my gosh, judgment, we can't judge anybody, we gotta be tolerant, we gotta accept everything. Yes, we do. We accept everything, but we do make judgments. We don't judge people's eternal destination. But we do judge their behavior. We judge their words. We have to. Take them at their word, right? So, all right, we're called to sanctification, leaven, and it is our special task to order and throw light upon these temporal affairs. It's our responsibility, y'all. I can't stress this enough. And if your family is anything like my family, you have the complete spectrum of personalities in it. You have the complete spectrum of political beliefs. You have the complete spectrum of views on the church. All of it. And it all comes out at Thanksgiving and Christmas and holidays and birthdays. And y'all know what I'm saying. Right? We all live there. And we need to throw light upon these temporal affairs so that we can all... All right, so what is forming consciences for faithful citizenship? What is this document? Let me get a question and a show of hands. How many of you, be honest, there's been polling on this. How many of you, oh gosh, how is it phrased in the poll? The poll goes something like this. How likely are you to take into consideration what the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops has to say about voting? How likely are you to put stock in and trust in what the bishops have to say? Not very many hands are going up. Guess what? A poll was done last election season, and Catholics said that almost 60-some% said that they don't care what the bishops have to say. They just don't care. Now, there are a multitude of reasons this is not that talk, right? Of why people have that opinion of the bishops. So it's really incumbent upon us as faithful lay Catholics to learn our faith, be leavened, and go out there, because my neighbor is more likely to listen to me than he is to what the bishop has to say. Right or wrong, right? I can't judge the guy, but that's just where he is. Well, Ron, I know you're a lawyer, I know you're a teacher. What do you think about this election cycle? What do you think about this? He's going to listen to me. He asked a question, right? So he's going to listen to me, give him an answer. He's not going to read the document. Not going to happen. Isn't going to happen. Isn't even going to read the bulletin insert. Isn't going to read the 2-paragraph or 2-column article in the Clarion That's what Christine Bordelon's going to do, I'm sure, as the election approaches. He's just not going to do it. And there's a multitude of reasons why he's not going to do it. Time restrictions and so forth and so on. So it's first and foremost, it's a teaching document. Second, this thing's been published every year since every 4 years since 1976, without fail. Every 4 years, the bishops published this document. Y'all didn't ask me this question because the forum isn't set up this way, but students would ask questions. They would ask something like, well, Mr. Cortea, if the bishops aren't listened to, then why should we care about this document? I give them a standard answer, right? Goofy, the Disney character, said a broken clock is what? It's right twice a day. Right? Okay, so that works with teenagers, but y'all aren't teenagers. So let's get a little deeper. Who are the bishops? The bishops are the successors of the apostles, who set up the hierarchy of the church, Christ himself. So because they're the successors of the apostles, we should listen to them. Just because they may have messed up in some areas of their episcopacies, right? The truth is still the truth. 2 + 2 is 4, whether Ron Cortez says it, or a man on death row in Angola says that. Right? 2 + 2 is 4. Truth is a truth. So that's what I try to do. Say, okay, bishops, they have a threefold duty, if you don't know, right? It's to teach, to sanctify, and to govern. Their teaching is the truth. Their sanctification is carried out through confirmation directly and through the priests and the deacons, right, who do sacraments and those sorts of things. And the governing, so if we have any issue with the bishops, it's in the area of their governance. But that's not tonight's talk. Let's focus on what they're teaching. And is what they're teaching the truth? And if it is the truth, then let's get behind it. And let's promote it. Let's internalize it. Let's live it. And if it's not the truth, then run out of here. I'm just being real with you. It's either true or it's not true. Okay, published every 4 years. Let me show y'all something. This book right here, I found the 1976 Bishop's document. It was called Political Responsibility, Reflections on an Election Year. It was published February 12, 1976. It is 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7 pages long, and it has a grand total of 14 footnotes. 7 pages long with 14 footnotes. This document is over 50 pages with over 50 footnotes. These footnotes are references to documents that are very small. These footnotes reference encyclicals. 14 major encyclicals are referenced in this document. How many of y'all have ever tried to read an encyclical? Be honest. A papal letter. You know they are really hard to get through, right? They are really hard. They're really long. A numbered paragraph is not really one paragraph. It could be 3, 4, 5 paragraphs. There are hundreds of pages. So when I say I'm not an expert, I have not read all of the encyclicals that are referenced in this document. Not all 14 of them, I'm here to tell you. There are over 50 major statements by the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops referenced in this document. I have not read all 50 of them either. Right? But I've read enough to put my faith in this being the truth. But I'm still learning myself. All right, so let's keep going. All right, where am I? I am right here. All right, so the document represents the bishop's guidance for Catholics in the exercise of our rights and duties as responsible citizens. Okay, so we're 51 pages, not using number of paragraphs, we're going to take a document 64, well, on this 64. It reminds us that all human beings are equally sacred. Are equally sacred. No one is more sacred than another. Just because you may be of means and stature and position, fame, power, whatever it is, you are no more sacred than the homeless guy under the bridge on Airline Highway. Or as we say now, Airline Drive. Right? We're equally sacred. That's a key thing. So you mean to tell me, Ron, an illegal immigrant is equally sacred to me, born in this country, pay my taxes, da-da-da? That's what I'm saying. That's what the bishops are saying. They're saying that every soul is equally sacred. Those souls are more sacred than the others. Okay, the introductory note states that the threat of abortion remains the preeminent priority. Now, if you're a C-SPAN nerd like me, I grew up watching C-SPAN and Judge Wapner. Okay, people ask, how'd you become a lawyer? Well, when I was a kid, I watched Judge Wapner. I thought that was fun. And then I watched C-SPAN. Weird, huh? I loved watching C-SPAN, how laws were made and all of that. And if you like that sort of stuff, Google the Bishops' Conference from November of last year and watch the debate among the bishops about this language. This was not unanimously adopted by the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. And so when you see bishops on TV or priests on TV saying that environment is the preeminent issue, or immigration is the preeminent issue, or racism is the preeminent issue, okay, the document itself had been printed out because the 2020 version doesn't include the introductory note that has that language. But anyway, the bishops say that abortion is the preeminent issue, preeminent priority. And we're going to get into why next week, more the why, when we start applying Catholic social justice teaching to the issues. So why is that the preeminent one? Right? You have some thoughts in your mind. You probably have some reasons. Right? You've heard people talk about it, preach about it. Okay, let's see. It informs Catholics that we should vote in accord with moral convictions. Right? We're not knee-jerk people. We don't respond out of hate. We don't respond out of disorderly passions. It's a conviction that we should feel deep inside. It's not a 19-year-old kid. The volume. It's not, a 19-year-old kid voting that gas is too high. It's all voting for somebody to lower the gas prices. Right? It's deeper than that. It's a moral conviction. Let's see. The document states that Catholic social teaching can and should be a guide to help us participate. So what is Catholic social justice teaching? We're going to learn about that. Helps Catholics responsibly fulfill our baptismal call and our universal call to holiness to compel us to participate in public life and contribute to the common good, the sum total of all conditions that help people thrive to be all that God has called them to be. The common good. How can we help people, of all races, all genders, all backgrounds, all socioeconomic conditions? How can we raise everyone's vote up? Tells us that the church teaches about issues affecting public policy because that is our mission as a church, which comes from Christ. The easiest and simplest thing to get in our brains is, when they bring you a coin, or are y'all going to pay the temple tax? Okay, go give me a fish. Here's a fish. Here's the coin. Whose inscription? Caesar. Give to Caesar what is Caesar's, but give to God what is God's. Right? So give to Caesar. Who's Caesar? Well, Caesar is the government, right? The public square. We can be in the public square. But let's give God. Let's think of St. Thomas More, right before he gets beheaded. Right? You read that in high school at Rommel, Archbishop Rommel guy. A man for all seasons. Right? I'm dutifully, or the king's good servant, but God's first. That's what we have to be about as Catholics. All right. It affirms that all Catholic faithful have a moral obligation to participate in political life and shaping the moral character. Goes back to Lumen Gentium 31, right? We're to be led. Teaches that responsible citizenship is a virtue. Good old-fashioned virtues and vices. Right? What's a virtue? It's a good habit. It's a muscle that constantly gets built up over time, that instinctively has that muscle memory to do that which is good. Just like a vice is the opposite. It's a muscle memory that lurches us in the direction of doing that which is not good. They both get built up. It says that Catholics should prepare themselves for participation in the public square by first and foremost developing a well-formed conscience. So what is our conscience? Jiminy Cricket. You know, Jiminy Cricket was Pinocchio's conscience, right? Is that conscience? Is it the angel on one shoulder and the devil on the other shoulder? Is that my conscience? And they're having a wrestling match. You know, is it an intuition? Well, I got a feeling on this one. I got a feeling on this one. Really, it's my conscience. Is it a almost said trump card, but I didn't want to go there. But is it a card that we play to do whatever we want to do and justify it? Well, my conscience told me to do that, so therefore it must be right. You hear people talk like this. You hear politicians talking like this, right? Since we're talking about voting, I don't want to just single them out. There are people in business who talk like this, people in law who talk like this, right? Whatever field you're in, you hear people talk like this, and they try to justify behavior based upon things such as that. All right, what forming consciences for faithful citizenship of culture? What is it not? That's important. There are an awful lot of priests out there, on both sides, talking about if you vote for this guy, it's a sin. If you vote for this guy or that party, it's a sin. Okay? And they're trying to justify what they're saying by using this document. They couldn't be more off. They couldn't be further from the truth. The truth of the matter is, this document is not an endorsement of or opposition to any particular person, party, at all. It's to inform us, educate us, teach us as Catholics. It's not campaign literature. You're not going to find campaign material in this document. It's just not there. It's not a voter's guide or a scorecard where we have the two candidates side by side and we look at them and we weigh and no, it's not that either. And it's not a call to work for any party or any candidate. Okay, where can you get a copy of this? If you have a cell phone and you want to take this out, take it out, take a snapshot of this thing. It's on the usccb.org website. If you go to the top of it, you'll see there's a bunch of tabs, issues and action. You go under issues and action, you find faithful citizenship, you click on that, and it will lead you directly to this document. And you can look at it for yourself and see if what I'm talking about is real or not real. Test it. Test it. Oops. Okay, what's conscience? All right, well, let's get all catechism. And conscience, y'all can read the definition of conscience right out of the catechism. It's a judgment of reason. It's a judgment of reason. So it's not an emotional response, it's not Jiminy Cricket, it's not any of those other things that we talked about. It's a judgment of reason. The document, Forming Consciences for Faithful Citizenship, says, conscience is the voice of God resounding in the human heart, revealing the truth to us and calling us to do what is good and what is evil, to make right judgments. And I have two references there. 1 Peter 3:11. I would always tell my classes, if you don't remember anything that you have learned in my class the entire year, remember 1 Peter 3:11. Do good and avoid evil. The bottom line, right? Everybody wants the bottom line. Sometimes it's hard to figure out what is the good and what is the evil, right? That's the hard part. Why did I have St. Thomas Aquinas? Because that's how he summarized the moral law, to do good and to avoid evil. Oops. Okay, if you get to wordplay and all of that, conscience is the prefix con, which is with or together, and then science, as you can see, is all down the line here, from a Latin word meaning knowledge and reason. So it's with knowledge. We're going to make decisions with knowledge. That's how we're going to make our decisions. How we're going to inform our consciences. How should a Catholic form his or her conscience? Be open to the truth and what is right. In other words, be an etch-a-sketch or be a canvas that is blank. Give yourself an opportunity to say, you know what? I am going to put what is Catholic truth on the etch-a-sketch, on the iPad if you're drawing, on the painting, on the canvas. I'm not going to prejudge anything. I'm going to be open to the truth. Some of us, we get entrenched in our positions, and then we go out looking for evidence to back up our position. And then we proof text and grab only that which supports us so that we can make arguments against those who are against us, and they're doing the same thing on their side. Finding evidence and proof to back up there. And there's no dialogue, everybody's talking against each other. Be open to the truth. Study Scripture. Study Scripture. Don't be afraid of it. Learn about the authoritative teachings of the church. The authentic, I would even add authentic teachings of the church. Research. Examine the facts. Who is this candidate? Where did this candidate come from? What did they believe 5 years ago? What did they believe 10 years ago? What are they saying today? How is it similar? How is it different? Have they walked the walk very long, or are they just doing this time because they think they can play us? All those sorts of things. Right? It goes into our calculus. Develop the virtue of prudence. Right reason in action. Okay. Seek the prudent advice and counsel of people who know what they're talking about. You can find a priest who will tell you just about anything you want to hear. There are priests out there who, no offense, Father Joe, Father Tien, right? That you can find them, and they will say, on the marriage issue, on abortion, on any of these, we just look past those things. And we just sort of, and they come up with some conclusion to justify what they want to happen. Wait a second. How did you get from point A to point B? You lost me there. You really lost me. Pray for the gifts of the Holy Spirit. Regularly partake in examination of your conscience to hear God's voice and prayerfully reflect to discern God's will. What conscience isn't? Right? We went through some of that. Is your conscience always correct? No, it isn't. It's not always correct, but should you always follow it? Yes. You should always follow it, but what most people don't say is the next part, the caveat. Yes. Oops. Uh-oh. I went screaming past it. Sorry. Seek prudent advice. Perfectly discern the will of God. Regularly partake. Okay, good. Thought I lost it. Is conscience always correct? Okay, we did that. Should we always follow it? Yes, as long as we first seriously seek to form our consciences to make right judgments. Willful ignorance is not an excuse that allows us to make erroneous judgments. We cannot just bury our head in the sand. I don't normally do this, but I'm going to do it. I watched both conventions, right? I watched both of them. Both of them had their fair share of Catholic people to speak on behalf of the person. And one of the speakers at one of the conventions said, abortion is an issue above my pay grade. No, abortion is not an issue above anybody's pay grade. It is not that complicated. Right? You have the male-donated part of reproduction and the female-donated part of reproduction. They come together. Ensoulment takes place in that very moment. We believe that. That's a part of our faith. We are in the soul-saving business, not the soul-killing business. It's very easy. You can explain this to a 5-year-old. You don't even have to use graphic language. So it's not above anybody's pay grade to say that the killing and the snuffing out of an innocent soul is wrong. The intentional killing of that soul is wrong. It's not above anybody's pay grade. So willful ignorance, and I'm not saying the person is willfully ignorant on that point, but willful ignorance is not an excuse that allows us to make erroneous judgments. It just isn't. Did I go too far? All right. What are some challenges that we face in forming our consciences? Well, they're countless. I'll just put a few. Forgetting that we vote in accord with our moral convictions that seek a civilization of life and love. St. John Paul II. That's how we vote. We want a civilization of life and love for everybody. That should drive us and compel it. Forgetting both and by exercising only one of the duties of responsible and faithful citizenship. In the document, they talk about a positive duty and a negative duty. We have a positive duty to promote the common good. That's all those conditions to help everybody thrive. But there's also a negative duty, not to support intrinsically evil actions. That we will get into next time in great detail. What is an intrinsically evil action? What constitutes an intrinsically evil action? Is it ever okay to involve oneself in intrinsically evil actions? Either by way of formal cooperation or material cooperation. Kind of deep, but we'll go there next time. Being a single-issue voter. We are not single-issue voters. Believe it or not. We don't just say, oh, I want lower gas prices, so I'm voting for the candidate who's promising lower gas prices. I don't care where he stands on anything else. Lower gas prices, he's my man. That's a 19-year-old's mind, right? Voting like that. But, however, catch this now. This is all out of the document. A voter, a Catholic voter, may disqualify a candidate who promotes an intrinsically evil action. So if a candidate is promoting something which is absolutely intrinsically evil, meaning there's never a good time to engage in that behavior, never, we can disqualify that candidate in our mind. Father Joe knows this, and if there are any other lawyers in here, judges always give this in their jury instructions at the end. If you found a witness to be lacking veracity, not credible, you can discount their whole testimony. You can discount the entire testimony of that witness. candidates. So we can do that with political candidates. So if there's a candidate that you discern is so out of the norm and out of the mainstream on an issue that we hold sacred in our church, you can disqualify that candidate on that issue alone. But we're not single issue voters. So it's both sides of the coin, right? Failing to avoid two temptations. The document talks about these two temptations. What are they? Treating all issues as morally equivalent. See, there's a lot of this going around right now. And we get into this next time when we look at the issues directly. There are what are called the intrinsic evil ones, and there are those that are left to our prudential judgment. And there is documentation that says there's a hierarchy of issues. Some are more important than others. They are not all equal. And so we got to look at that. So is capital punishment the same as tax policy? Right? I grabbed two that were not as controversial as I could have, right? So capital punishment is the killing of someone who is in state control. I was 37 years old before I became an advocate against capital punishment. It took me a long time to reason that through. Well, that person wasn't innocent. That person got a fair trial. That person's had 25 appeals, 16 stays, and all this other sort of stuff. And they're a burden on society, and on and on and on. Before I realized that that person is a soul, like I'm a soul, equally sacred in the eyes of God. So is capital punishment on the same par with a prudential judgment issue like tax policy? You're talking about life and money. It's two totally different things. And they're not equivalent. They're not equal in the hierarchy of issues. One is more, to use the bishop's word from earlier about abortion, it's more of a priority. They go in priority order. All right, so that's a problem some people make. It's a challenge we can have in forming our consciousness. The second one is to use the fact that there is a moral distinction between the issues to ignore some of the issues. Well, we have a real problem in our society. Abortion's killing a lot of people. 6 in 10 babies of color die in the city of New York by abortion. Talk about racism. 1 out of every 2 abortions is a girl. Talk about sexism. So, to misuse the moral distinction of the issues, to ignore some. We don't ignore tax policy. We don't ignore immigration. We don't ignore education. We don't ignore climate. We don't ignore health care. We don't ignore those issues just because there are all these other pressing ones. But I have seamless garment up here. Hope I don't lose y'all on this one. Seamless garment gets a lot of play. Lots of play, right? Cardinal Bernard Law. No, it wasn't Law. It was Bernardin. Cardinal Bernardin out of Chicago came up with this. The earliest time that he mentions the seamless garment was in his second public speech that he gave at the St. Louis University, March 11th, 1984. March 11th, 1984. And he talks about all of the life issues and all of the social justice issues being woven together in this seamless garment. And so what people do in our churches, they say, oh, I believe that this issue is equivalent with this issue because of the seamless garment. That's what someone will say. What do we say back? Well, I just repeat what Cardinal Bernardin said right here. The fact that this statement, he's talking about the 1984 statement on political responsibility. The fact that this statement sets forth a spectrum of issues of current concern to the church and society should not be understood as implying that all issues are qualitatively equal from a moral perspective. The issues are not equal. They may all be part of one garment, but they're not all equal. That is critical to forming our consciences. Absolutely critical. What if we have candidate A who believes in abortion, and we have candidate B who also believes in abortion? Okay? Abortion is an intrinsic evil. We can discount both of them, right? Because we can on one issue, we can sit it out if we want. Or we can then begin to look at other issues and how these candidates stand on those issues. Because we've equated intrinsic evil ones with intrinsic evil ones and prudential ones with prudential ones. It's like if we had fruit up here, right? We would compare apples to apples and oranges to oranges. We wouldn't compare apples to oranges. Does that make sense? It's very critical. And there are priests running around this country right now, confusing the heck out of Catholics on that very point. And they're on TV, and every year, every election season, I just get my blood boils that they're allowed this forum to get on there and spread misinformation about what the document teaches. Okay, I need to wrap up here soon so we can get some questions. All right, being impatient by shortcutting the process to learn, study, research, and all of that. Do the best you can under the circumstances, right? I'm doing the best I can. Every year I learn a little more, we grow. Falling into cafeteria, Catholicism, comfortable Catholicism, something Professor Robert George, Princeton University, great legal mind, legal philosophy and all of that. Beige Catholicism, something that Bishop Barron has coined. You can look these things up and Google and learn more about it. And listening to the wrong people for information, advice, or counsel. So my question to you is, before we close, where are you getting your information from? Archbishop Charles Chaput, who is retired now, Archbishop former in Colorado, formerly of Philadelphia, wasn't it? Right? He says Catholics have been catechized, which we have been taught, right? Catholics have been catechized by the secular culture for years, rather than being catechized by the church. We will go find a politician who will say, or some prominent person who will say, and we think, well, surely they must be in the know. They must know what they're talking about. I'll believe them. How many people have been led off the road, off the track, and you can find them everywhere. They are everywhere. Okay. With that, I'll open it up for questions. I hope you were edified tonight in some way. Thank you for giving your time to come here tonight. And any shortcomings in the presentation are totally my own. Yes, sir. That's a good question. I don't know exactly. I think there are 368 dioceses, Father Joe? Does that sound about right?
I think there are 190-something dioceses.
Okay.
It's about 300 plus bishops, I believe. But
okay, that's where the 300 number comes in. Okay, the vote was it was a 65, 70, 30 split on having the language of abortion being the preeminent priority. It was a fierce debate. Chaput and some of the others were on one side, and Cardinal Supich and some of the other ones were on the other side. And and you can see, right? I know we are famous in the Catholic Church for giving ourselves labels, right? I'm a Christmas Catholic. I'm a CEO Catholic, right? Christmas, Easter, Catholic. You hear this, you know, I'm a devout Catholic. I'm a practicing Catholic. You know, I'm a cafeteria Catholic. We're Catholic. We're Catholic. I'm a liberal Catholic. I'm a progressive Catholic. We're Catholic. Right? Breeze is going to take the field on Sunday with the saints, and he's not going to say, I'm sort of a saint. I am a whatever. Strong saint. What man? He was a really strong Catholic. What does that mean? Right? He's a Catholic. Breeze is a saints player. Yes. They do not have that in the introductory note of the previous one. But can I say just one more thing on that? In every one of these documents on political responsibility going all the way back to 1976, when they highlight which issues are of major significance that cycle, abortion is always the first one. Always the first one. And I have every single political, I told Father Jonas, I have every single one of these statements from 1976 with the exception of one, and that's 1992. I don't have that one because I think it might have been very controversial. It was about, its title was Political Responsibility, Reviving American Democracy. I'm not sure if it got pulled, it's out of print, what happened to it. But I'm guessing that the bishops may have gone what some perceive to be a little too far in the document. I cannot find that one anywhere, but I have got them all, I've looked at them all, and I've compared them like side by side. Abortion is always the first one. But go ahead and finish your thought. Those are challenges. What the gentleman is asking is the second to last one from the bottom. Remember, these are challenges that we face in either forming our consciences or exercising our consciences. Right? In cafeteria, Catholicism is, remember the old, you know, when they had cafeterias around, we don't have that anymore. We would go through and say, okay, give me a little of this, a little of that. Oh, that doesn't agree with me, skip that, do this. So we're either Catholic or we're not. And that's what I would stress in my classrooms and when I'm with my family, that's what I say. That doesn't mean we're perfect, but we're either on the team or we're not. Good question. Okay, he's asking for clarification about who these people are. Professor Robert George is a professor of legal jurisprudence and philosophy at Princeton. And from everything I have read about him and read that he has written, yes, he's good to go to for a resource. There are lots of other ones. And so is Bishop Barron. They will inform us of what is beige Catholicism. It's bland, it's milquetoast, it's avoidance of things because it might be controversial. I won't name the priest, I won't name the parish, okay? But it was Respect Life Sunday. I waited in line to greet the priest after a homily that was so milquetoast. It was horrible. And so I waited in line and I got to him and said, Father, today is Respect Life Sunday. The CYO is selling flowers. You didn't even mention it. He said, if I mention something like that to this congregation, the money would dry up next week. I would have no money. I said, well, that's a practical consideration you have to make. I said, I'm just, you know, as a Catholic, I'm looking for something on Respect Life Sunday. That's all. Yes, sir.
Could you name some of the issues that will be covered next week? week that we haven't talked about?
Oh, okay. The bishops list a whole litany of them, right? Human life, promoting peace, marriage and family, religious freedom, health care, migration, Catholic education, promoting justice and countering violence, combating unjust discrimination, care for our common home, communications, media, culture, and something they call global solidarity, realizing that, we are all one big family. And so under each of these big headings, you can see where there would be lots of opportunity to have questions. So what I hope to do next time is a short catechesis on Catholic social teaching, dignity of the person, common good, subsidiarity, solidarity, right? And then go through the issues with just a few slides, and then really open it up for questions and have a much longer, deeper discussion that way. Go ahead, Father Joe. Anything else? All right, so tonight was about our conscience. I hope you got a feel for the document itself, right? And I hope you got an idea on what our conscience is and what it isn't, and how we go about forming it, and avoiding some of the challenges to forming it and exercising our conscience. If there are no other questions, any other questions? We don't want to shut it down. Okay. If you want to call the rectory and leave me a message, I'd be happy to send you the full slideshow if you would like it. Or if you have any questions you would like to talk about privately, I'll be happy to do that also. Yes, ma'am.
We need to stop. If you could maybe ask the question after we finish, because we're 10 minutes after 8 right now. Okay? Please join me in thanking Ron for his presentation today. Standing and popping in the microphone. We actually got together in church with our technician. We practiced it all. It was perfect. And I don't know what went on tonight. But this is much clearer, correct? So if we have to move to this microphone next Wednesday, we will move to this microphone because there's no popping and there's no feedback. And that was annoying. So I'm sorry about that. I think there's still terrific content to what he presented. I hope you got that. And next time, as he said, we're going to talk about the 4 main characteristics of Catholic social teaching, and then break down the particular points that the bishops have asked us to focus on in this election cycle, which he just mentioned. So thank you all very much for coming. Hope you will come back next Wednesday, same time. God bless you.